webinar. And before we get started, I just want to introduce who we are, what we're doing here this morning. This is the ACE Professional Development Webinar Series. I'm your host, Priscilla Hansen Mahoney. We also have Terry Johnson, who is the Vice President. I am the President. And we also have Judy behind the scenes. She is our tech wizard behind the curtain. And she will help you with any technical questions that you may experience during the webinar. ACE is a 501c6 nonprofit business association, and our mission is to promote our diverse professional development through education, resources, and collaborative relationships. One of the ways that we do that is to provide educational webinars like we are doing today, and that gives us the and provide education to our fellow professionals and community. I am Priscilla Hansen Mahoney of Blazing Trails Coaching. I work with small businesses, mostly in the trades and industries. I help them grow, profit, and succeed by aligning them with the right tools, the right resources, and the right people. Today I'm going to be teaching you a tool that I commonly teach. I've built out probably, dozens and dozens of customer journeys with clients and group settings, workshops, webinars. And this is a tool that I fell in love with a few years ago when I attended a conference about marketing. And this was a game changer for me. This really nailed down not only my marketing plan, but my customer experience plan. I always worried that for the amount of money that my clients spend on coaching and coaches, are they getting everything that they need from this experience? And now, because of mapping out my own customer journey, I feel very confident that, that I am providing them that experience. I'm also the president of the Association for Consulting Expertise. I work a lot with other consultants, and I know that, that one of the questions that we always ask is, who's involved? Who are the people who are involved in any process? So this customer journey will help answer some of those questions for you. Before, when you signed up for this webinar, you should have received some handouts when you signed up. And if you are missing those handouts or you did not get them in your email, you can get them through this bit.ly link. You do have to capitalize BTC-CJMAP. And if you enter that into a URL, you will find, you'll be able to sign up and get those handouts emailed to you. So whether you can do that now during the session or after, at least you'll have those resources at a later date. What is a customer journey map? Has anybody heard of it before? You know, it's a tool that I had never heard of before, but it seems to be commonly used a lot in startups and business model development. But when I was first introduced to the tool, I had never heard of it before. So the basic explanation of a customer journey map is that all customers are on a journey, and they start this journey long before they become aware of you, long before they even know that they have a need for your product. They may be experiencing symptoms of why they could use your product, but they may not even understand that you exist or your industry exists as a solution. All they know is they're experiencing symptoms. They may have had an event that has set off them on a quest to find the solution to a problem. And it might not even be a problem necessarily. Like, my husband is an event DJ, and the event that kicks off his clients going on a customer journey is getting engaged, getting that big diamond. And that's what will set them off on a journey. And they're on a journey to find vendors and solutions and people who can help them with their wedding. So it may not be a tragic event, it might be a happy event, but there's some trigger that happens long before your clients have even started researching or started uh, investigating, that sets them off on this journey of buying a product or service. So where you begin on this customer journey map is to understand what trigger happens that sets them off on this journey. Now, for a wedding DJ, that's very easy. Somebody got engaged, and it could even be before that they've been in a serious relationship for a long time. They might not actually have the diamond yet, but they may be dating for a long time, and they're planning a wedding in the future. So you need to know what the trigger is that sets somebody off on your customer journey. And that might not be as obvious. It certainly didn't feel obvious for my clients. And sometimes there's more than one trigger. So for my clients, it may be that they are feeling burnt out, and that's the trigger. They're starting to feel burnt out and stressed, or they may decide that they want to hire employees and they want to grow and scale. And so that may be the trigger that starts them on a journey of finding solutions to their problem or challenge. So it's very important that you pinpoint the trigger when you get started on this customer journey map. And it's also important to know that you have to design this with one specific customer in mind. So therefore, you may build out 2 or 3 different customer journey maps, depending if you have different customer segments. So in other words, when would be a time that you would have more than one customer segment? Let's say you ran a magazine and you earn your money by selling subscriptions to your magazine. So you have one customer who is your reader, but you may also run advertisement in your magazine. So you have a separate customer that is your advertisers. So those are two separate avatars, and you would have totally different conversations with them. They both have different buying triggers. They both have different problems or challenges. And so therefore you would have a separate customer journey for each of your customer segments. So when you design your customer journey, you need to pick one customer segment, one specific persona that you are building this customer journey for. And if you don't feel like you know your specific customer persona, this is where you're going to do quite a bit of research. You might poll your current clients to see if there's some commonality between them. You might ask questions like, what were your goals when you first initiated working with me? You might ask them, what were the problems that you were trying to solve? And you might ask them things about demographics and their living situations or their place in the world. You also may ask them, what attracted you to my website? What made you reach out to me? And so once you start finding some commonality in your clients, if you're just starting out, like when I first started out coaching, consulting, my clients were like all over the place. Like I had a very wide breadth of clients. I had some that were just starting out their business. I had some that had been in business for 10 or 15 years. I had some that were looking to, their goals were to move on and have succession planning. So I felt like nobody really had any commonalities. So I asked myself, which group do I like working with the most? And started to focus on them. And that might even bring you into a niche market, which is always nice as well. So you also want to build this customer journey map built from your customer's point of view. So you're not building it from, and here's, I'm going to do this for you next, and I'm going to do this for you next, and I'm going to do this for you next. This really requires you to step into empathy. You need to literally step into your customer's shoes and walk in them for a mile. Now, if you are anything like me, I am my best client. I fit my persona pretty well. A lot of us tend to work with people who are like us. And so we tend to provide services that have helped us in the past or help us grow and move. So if you're like that, you're going to be able to do this exercise fairly easily because you've been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. But if you provide a service or a product for someone that you may not necessarily relate to, maybe you are providing health care services for elderly patients and you are not elderly, you would have to really step into that elder's shoes to understand where they're coming from, what fears do they have, what challenges do they have, what frustrations get to them each day, and really mark those points out from their point of view. And lastly, your customer journey needs to describe the touch points that your customers use to interact with your organization. So in other words, touch points are where you and your client intersect. Sometimes the very first touch point could be your website. They've Googled something, they found an answer, they hit a link, and your website pops up. So that is their first impression that they have with you, and if your products and services are going to match the journey they're on. So if you haven't done the empathy piece, if you haven't stepped into your client's shoes and really understand where they're coming from, you might miss the mark on your website when they're first interacting with you. Some other touch points that you may have may be your social media presence. It may be the organizations that you belong to. So in other words, I belong to the Association for Consulting Expertise. That's a touch point. Whether I directly or indirectly interact with my clients there, they certainly see my activity there. And so it's another place where we come together and see each other's point of view. So whatever activities that you do, whatever you're putting out into the world as far as social media, articles, blogs, website, podcasts, webinars, you want to make sure that the touch points are something that your customers can relate to and they say, yeah, that makes sense. I get why she's doing that. I get why she's appearing in this place at this time. Okay, now we're going to get into the actual meat of this webinar, and that is creating your customer journey map. And I'm going to give a little caveat of we have about maybe 30 minutes left today together. This process takes much longer than that. So this is just an overview. When I work with clients, our first meeting together to start this process is a 2-hour meeting, and that really just gets them started. And so don't feel frustrated if you don't walk away with a full mapped out journey today. That's okay. This is really what's going to get you started on creating your customer journey map. So step one is that what we talked about when I was doing the overview is research. You need to research your ideal clients and define your ideal client. And if you're just starting out and you don't have clients yet, that's okay. Write out a persona of somebody that you would like to help. Who gets you excited? I'm working with a client right now who's building an education model business. So he's going to be providing educational services for people. And we talked about what demographic does he want to work with? And we identified millennials as a demographic. And then we actually identified in an even younger demographic. I think it's generation Z, X, Y, I can't remember. The really young ones, the 19 to 25-year-olds. And I said, does that excite you to work with that demographic? And he's like, yes, I would love to work with young people and head them off before they start the bad habits. And he was really excited and energized about that demographic. So that's the demographic we're going to run with. He doesn't have clients yet, but that's the demographic that we're building his customer journey on, because that's what really excites him. Identify your customer phases. So in other words, even though he's identifying a younger market, so 19 to 25-year-olds, in 5 years, they're going to be a completely different person. I don't know about you, but I was a completely different person from age 25 to age 30. So you really want to identify the phases that they're going to go through during the life of the service or product that you are giving them. So some people have a very short window of time that you work with clients, but some people have a very long time of a window when you're working with clients. So you want to identify, are they going to shift and start identifying themselves differently during the process in which they work with you? Step 2, you want to map out your customer's experience. So this involves identifying those touch points or opportunities that you have to intersect with your client. This also requires you to research your customer's experience. So you're actually going to have to remove yourself from the story, maybe interview people who've gone through from soup to nuts the experience that you want to put them through. So you might want to reach out to people and say, hey, is there anybody out there who has ever wanted to scale their business and was successful in doing it? I want to interview you so that you really understand the entire process and the experience that they went through. You also want to identify the problems that they may have and the solutions that you provide, because a lot of times I'll run into coaches or consultants or even service providers, and they're not 100% certain about the problem that they solve for their clients. And that's when your marketing can feel pretty wishy-washy and you're going to miss the target. All right, step 3. This is when you want to test your concepts. So even when I bring in clients and they sit with me for 2 hours and we build out a customer journey map and I say, go out and test it. So I don't want you to fall in love with the first rendition of this product, because chances are whatever theories you come up with your coach, with your consultant, with your mastermind group, or even with yourself, these are all theories until you go out and test them. You also want to have a way of measuring success to make sure that you're right. So if you put out a Facebook ad, you may want to create a Facebook ad A and a Facebook ad B and test which one worked better, testing the different theories and concepts that you came up with during the customer journey process. And step 4 is maintenance. This map, once you have it built out, becomes a living part of your process. You look at it every single day. I refer to my customer journey map every time I write a blog, every time I create a piece of content, every time I make a new program. I pull out my customer journey map and I look at it and I say, what opportunities do I have? What pain points am I hitting upon? What conversations need to be had in this marketing piece? So you're always going to refer to it and you're always going to keep it updated. So as I mentioned before, step 1 is research. Who is your ideal client? So these are actually questions I want you to answer for yourself while you're going through this webinar. Who's your ideal client? Maybe somebody pops into your mind that you just loved working with. They loved working with you. They couldn't wait to pay your invoice. I have one client that he's always saying, "What now? When do I owe you money?" I love that. I have clients who sign up and they're like, they automatically want to sign up for automatic bill pay because they can't wait to get into the services, and they love working with me, and I love working with them. And then you also have to ask yourself, do you have multiple customer segments? And if you do, you have to, again, spell each one out and do a separate customer journey for each one. So here's my ideal client. And this is not an actual person, this is a stock photograph. But his name is Joe, and Joe the Trades business owner. This is one of my personas that I've written a customer journey out for. Joe wanted to grow and scale his company in order to survive. He was doing it all. He was running around in his pickup truck, inspecting work, making sales, meeting with customers. He was constantly on his employees to not forget things. He was constantly getting questions from his employees about trivial things that they should have been able to make decisions on. His phone never stopped buzzing. When I met with him for coffee, he had his phone on the table and he probably got 5 or 6 text messages from his crew members who are out doing work and asking very trivial questions on what they should do next. He didn't know how to delegate. He didn't know how to create processes. He had 25 years of experience in his head, and he needed to get it out on paper so that he could start replicating processes and duplicating what he does. So he's my ideal client. Love, love, love working with Joe. So the typical age for Joe is between 38 and 48. So midlife maybe. I don't even know what midlife is anymore since we're living to 120 nowadays. When I say my ideal client is male, I don't mean that they are physically male. Marketing plans are sexist and generalizing. So do I work with females? Absolutely. Actually, I love working with women, but they work in a male-dominated, traditionally male-dominated industry. And so it's more of a male persona that is had. The profession, trades, service industries, salary, budget. I like my clients being successful. They are earning money, and that's why they need help. They're overburdened with the fact that they are making money. And they have employees, and so that's another burden. They may even be stressed out about providing a livelihood for these employees, and if they mess up, something could happen to their employees, and that keeps them up at night. And typically, my clients are married, and they typically do have school-age children. So you really want to think about exactly who is your ideal client. To work out what, I brought in some feelings of empathy about Joe. He's overwhelmed, he's stressed out, he's feeling burnt out, he worries and stresses about his employees. How do I know that? Well, I either talk to Joe and he tells me that, or I can step into Joe's shoes and be like, what would it be like to wake up every day knowing I'm responsible for 12 other employees making a living, and making sure that my company is not only successful enough so I get paid and the company gets paid and the company has good cash flow, but I can make payroll every week. What's that like? So you really want to get into your customer's head and speak their language. You want to learn what industry terms they use. You want to learn how they refer to themselves and how they refer to others and what place in the world do they have. And you also want to think about, where do they focus a lot of their time, their energy? What do they care about? As I mentioned, my ideal client usually has school-aged children. There's a lot of guilt to running a business and having school-aged children, and maybe missing out on certain things of their lives. Maybe you're missing soccer practice. Maybe you're missing school plays because you're working a lot. You're working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week because you're running your own business. I don't have children. So in order for me to understand what that feels like, I really have to come outside of myself and picture what it must be like to miss opportunities that your children are experiencing because you've taken on this massive responsibility of being a business owner. So the empathy map is something that you can use as a tool to really think about what they hear, what they see, how do they say things, how do they do things, how do they think and feel about things. Maybe they have a money mindset where maybe they have a scarcity mindset, and they feel like if they don't work hard, they won't reap the rewards of being of having money. Or maybe the opposite is true. Maybe they are afraid of making lots of money because there's a bad stigma around that. So you really want to think about, how do your clients think about money? How do your clients think about family? How do they think about politics? How does town politics affect them? How does national politics affect them? So you really have to build a story, and this takes some time. And the more time you spend doing this exercise, the greater reward you will reap. Because when you write a blog or do a sales page or write any type of content, it's going to be so much more valuable because you've really put yourself into their shoes to understand where they're coming from. And then step 2 is you want to map out that experience. You want to understand their purchasing behaviors. Are they impulsive? Do they make snap decisions? Or do they take a lot of time to research? Where do they typically get their information? I am learning very quickly that my ideal client gets the majority of their information from YouTube. YouTube is their reference library for everything. So it's very important I show up there. How do they consume information? Again, my ideal client's typically in a pickup truck. So they're not reading blogs, they're not reading social media, but they certainly are listening to podcasts and to audio programs. And where do they spend the majority of their time? So we talked about the trigger, what triggered them into buying, and then what opportunities do you have every step of the way? So if you find out that they spend the majority of their time behind their desk, then your opportunity may be to pop up on their desk, maybe using the Alexa news flashes, because they're always at their desk and they say, Alexa, give me the weather, or Alexa, give me my tasks. Maybe you provide an Alexa news flash, so when they say, Alexa, give me my briefings, you pop up on that as some source. That's a whole different webinar. We could get into that later. Okay, so now we're into the customer purchasing process. First, your clients have a need, a problem. We've talked about that. They might be getting married, they might be starting a business, they might be growing or scaling their business. They may be burned out. So in this scenario, just to kind of give you a metaphor, we're going to walk through the scenario of, I have a headache. So the customer becomes very aware they have a headache. And, picture yourself having a headache. So you're like, oh, I have a headache. And at this point, you're like, okay, is it because I've been sitting at my computer too long? Am I dehydrated? Am I tired? So that's at the point where the customer starts realizing they have a headache, and they start weighing the decision on, Should I do something about it, or is it just going to go away? Then the headache doesn't go away. So they're like, okay, at this point, what is it going to take this headache away? And now they're deciding to take action. So they may be researching, should I take ibuprofen or Tylenol? Should I drink water? Should I get a massage? Should I get acupuncture? So there's so many things that you can do to remedy a headache. And they are going to find out what solution works best for them. So they're often researching. They might do something themselves. So they're digging through their medicine cabinet. What do I have on hand? Do I have any ibuprofen? And then if that solution doesn't work, now they're going to go looking for other alternatives. What's the best options to cure this headache? So this is when they have exhausted every do-it-themselves remedy. They've tried it all. They've tried everything from ibuprofen to ice to resting, and they're still not feeling better. So now they're going to go to the magic world of Facebook and Google their question. I have a headache. It's been 2 days. What should I do? And then all their friends and family are going to chime in with their wonderful medical Facebook advice. And now it's up to the consumer to start evaluating all the products and brands that might satisfy their need. Now, at this stage, you might be introduced to them as a solution. Oh, you should reach out to Judy Jones. She has amazing headache remedies. Judy doesn't. Actually, Judy does. She provides web services that is a headache remedy, but point aside. So you might get referred to the client at this point. So you may have opportunities here. So keep that in mind as we're building your journey map. Now the client needs to make a purchase decision, and they are now making a choice. They're making an appropriate purchase or making a decision on what is best going to take away their headache. They are hopeful that it's going to work. They may even have buyer's remorse. I bought this product. I'm not sure it's going to work. So at this stage, there's hopefulness, but there's also a lot of trepidation. They might be worried or anxious that it's actually going to work this time. Now they've taken the solution. They've been using it. They have made a decision on whether it works. And if it does work, they're like, I'll use it again. So they're analyzing if they made the best decision. And based on their experience and their process, they're either going to recommend it or they're going to go on the internet and tell everybody how horrible their experience was. So we want to keep in mind the customer purchasing process as we are going through the customer journey map, so that when we are intersecting with our clients for the first time, we understand where they are in the buying process. You might be introduced to them during the evaluation of alternatives when the peers or family recommends you. You might be at the point where they've made decisions and they're making a decision to buy you. So it's very important to understand where they are in the journey so that you can intercept to them at the right time. Here's what this all comes into. We talked about step one of finding your customer persona. We talked about understanding their trigger points. We talked about understanding where they are in the buyer's journey. This is the puzzle board which all those puzzle pieces fit into. So this is the map that you will actually take all that information during your research process and put into this map. Take this map. Like I said, I provided a PDF of this map. Take it to your print shop. Ask them to print it out as large as you can print it and put it right up on your wall. And what I like to do is I actually have mine laminated, and I like to use sticky notes, and I like to use colors, and I like to move things around. So this is going to become a very interactive piece for you. The top axis is the customer journey over time. So this is the time that they are actually on the customer journey with you or without you, but hopefully with you. And the side axis is the customer activities and the interaction they have with your organization. Now, something to keep in mind, 97% of marketing, all the marketing that's out there, if you watch commercials for Coca-Cola or commercials for pharmaceuticals are famous for this, 97% of marketing is targeted to people who are already in the awareness stage. So they're already over in the second column of this journey. And what happens is if you try to jump into that second column with everybody else, what you're going to experience is a ton of noise. And not only that, but your prospective client is being bombarded with marketing messages, especially if you think about where they were in that buyer process. If they actually went out to Google or went out to Facebook and asked, what is the best remedy for their problem, and they got tons of recommendations, they are probably swamped in decision-making process. So what I recommend to you is to start in the unaware column. So that might be a little bit more difficult, but if you can market to people who are unaware that your solution will answer their problem and you get to them first of all, I call that education marketing, but it's going to be a lot quieter there in the marketing world. And you're going to intercept them at a very pivotal part of their journey where hopefully, if you do this right, they won't even put the question out to Facebook or to Google on what they should do to remedy their problems because you've already provided them those answers. And so it's going to be a much more streamlined process. Your sales closing time is going to be much shorter, and you're going to be able to work with a client who's much less confused on all the other stuff that's out there. So what you're really going to need to do, though, is research your client, find out who your ideal prospect is, what feelings are they having each step of the journey. So not just the feelings that they have before they meet you, but while they're working with you. And then again, when they intend to work with you. So the journey goes from unawareness to awareness to consideration to intent. So during this part, they haven't even signed a contract. They haven't paid you a dime, and they're already halfway through the customer journey. And then you're also going to want to do the work of finding out what their feelings are when they first start using your services and what it's like to use your services for a week, a month, a year. Are they bored? Do they drop off? Do they decide this is no longer valuable? I don't need this anymore? Do they not renew with you? Find out what your opportunities are down on this fourth block of what you can do to prevent that from happening so you can head them off at the pass. So as we talked before, step 3, test and improve. Where are people dropping off? What feedback have you received regarding your touch points and opportunities? What needs to be improved or solved? And are customers aware of the next steps that you provide? Oftentimes, clients will get enrolled in something and we forget to tell them what they get to do next. Okay, you solved this big problem. You no longer have a headache. Now maybe you could start paying attention to other places of your health. So we need to continually remind our clients that there's more opportunity down the road for them. Are we really good at foreshadowing what is to come next in our service cycle so that we can continue to build the excitement of working with us. And last, what needs to be tweaked in your own products and services? I've done a lot of tweaking to my products and services based on the interactions that I've had with my clients and letting me know their customer experience through the customer journey. And as we talked before, the last step is maintenance. Again, your customer journey map is a living document. You're going to print it out huge, big on a wall and keep it in front of you all the time. You're wanting to stay up to date and relevant with your customers as technology changes, as their age changes, as their status changes. So maybe you work with mid-level managers, and because they worked with you, they hired you so that they become a better leader, they get promoted to high-level management. What can you do to either maybe release them from the journey because you decide, I don't want to work with C-suite, so I can refer them on to someone else, or maybe you help them continue the journey with you by offering products and services that would support them in their continued journey. And you want to make sure that you're using your customer journey map as a communication tool throughout your organization. So this is not something that you design and keep in your own office. This is something that you design and you can talk about it with your clients. You can talk about it with your employees. Make sure that everybody's on the same page for the offerings that you give. And teaching your employees how to meet your clients where they are is probably one of the best things that you can do as far as customer service. So this can be used as a tool to demonstrate empathy for your clients and make sure that people are thinking about where are our clients now and what can we do to meet their needs in the place and point that they are at this moment. Okay, that is a wrap for that. I know it was a huge amount of information. Like I said, I teach this tool in VIP sessions that are often 2 hours or half-day sessions, and sometimes even longer. So if you have questions, now's the time to let me know what questions you may have.
Thank you, Priscilla. That was great. Customer journey is, I've heard the words, I've done some of the work myself in a lot of places, but the way you really dived into a lot of information about Joe is particularly interesting. One of the questions that I have is, how do you test your assumptions about Joe?
Good question. So it has a lot to do with, first of all, you need to talk to your clients to make sure things are working. So you always open a line of communication to make sure that their expectations were not only met but exceeded. You want to give them opportunities to give you feedback at every turn. And if you're testing your theories, let's say you're trying to write for a certain market or you're trying to create content for a certain market. As I said before, you test that by measuring the matrix. So if I write a blog or something for my test market and I put it out to my test market and it falls flat, nobody clicks on the headlines, nobody does a read through, I know that it missed the mark and I have to go back to the drawing board and tweak it again. So it's really, you're paying attention to how much buzz does your content create? Is it resonating with your audience? Is it being shared to other people who are facing the same challenges? Are you being recommended? So there's a lot of paying attention to what's happening within your organization as well to make sure that you're landing on the mark. But probably the number one answer to that question is you really need to keep those lines of communication open and flat out ask, was this everything you expected and more by hiring me or working with me?
Yeah, that's interesting. The feedback paths are great from current clients and your current targets, if you will. I'm wondering about it a little bit. A lot of our members are relatively new consultants, so they're trying to build their business. They're trying to find their lane in terms of what services they provide and those types of things. And is using the customer journey map to help define those things, do you see that as highly valuable, or is it too early? Or
I wish I'd found this tool when I first started, because it's really expensive to throw spaghetti at the wall to see if it sticks. So I wish I had a more defined process of brainstorming these things out. But I also wish I was introduced to the concept of it's okay to test market your, especially for consultants. Let's say you're a consultant or a coach and you want to work one-to-one with a new customer segment, but you don't know if you're effective. Let's face it, we've been trained a certain way. We believe our theories are effective, but until we put it into practice, we don't really know the answers to that. So when I was designing, I lead a few masterminds and affinity groups, and when I designed them, I opened it up to my target market, and I said, I'm running a beta test. You are literally a beta group. I'd like you to come in. You're getting it at a very steeply reduced cost, and what I need from you is feedback on if this program is effective for people in your industry. And believe it or not, I had a lot of people sign up for that. They were willing to participate, and I learned so much from those groups, so that when I put it out to my actual market and charged my rates, I felt comfortable knowing that I had a proven theory, that my theories work, and a proven formula, and people were responsive to it. So I felt comfortable charging the price that I was charging.
So it's got a lot of use in trying to build your business and define your clients and understand how you deliver and the feedback from everything. Most of the questions I have, I don't know if there's any other questions in the chat, but most of the questions I have has to do with the details, the guts of Joe's decision-making process. You talked a little bit about the trigger and the pain points in there. In my experience, one of the things is that a lot of potential clients in my target is I'm dealing with a lot of chronic pain. So the issue has to do with, you've learned to live with it this long, so what's the real trigger? What's the real point that someone gets to? And I didn't see that in the Joe description, so I don't know if there's something that's the real trigger in that, or if I'm just missing something.
Yeah, so oftentimes, and you're right, Terry, in our line of work, often there's no definitive trigger. For at least for my client, for Joe, he just has a nagging feeling in the back of his mind that he's not getting any younger. The politically incorrect way for me to say this is often the trigger that I hear people say is, I'm getting too old for this. Beep, I'm getting too old for this. And so what I ask other people to listen for is people who are saying things like that. I'm getting too old for this. I don't know how much longer I can, in my industries, they literally, their bodies can no longer do the work of roofing, of HVAC, of, their backs and their knees are giving out. And so they get to a certain age where they're physically tired. And if they think that they have no option but to continue working in that way, they will continue to work in that way until they can no longer do it. So when I mentioned that unaware column, I do a lot of education marketing, and I'm targeting those people who think that there's no other way to run their business except for them to do it. A lot of the cliche things they say to themselves is, if you want the job done right, you have to do it yourself. And so if I need to debunk that myth for them, and I do that through my education marketing, and I'm targeting that unaware client. They're not aware they need me. They may not even be aware that they actually have a problem. All they know is that they're experiencing symptoms that make them uncomfortable. And so the minute they hear somebody singing their song of, life doesn't always have to be that way, Joe, it's going to perk their ears, and they're going to be like, what do you mean? Tell me more.
Interesting. Okay. I think this has been great. I think that this is certainly another tool that I want to put into my toolbox and go out and map some journeys. But I did also wanted to.
Well, let me really quickly then just say that if you do want additional help, I am available to do that. First of all, to talk to me over coffee is free. Just buy me a coffee. We can always, I'll always chat to anyone for free. But if you did want to work, you know, and actually work out the system, I am making an offer for my ACE peeps. So this is the offer. I'm not going to like go over it too much, but if you want that offer, oh, that was crazy. I didn't mean to do that weird graphic. But this is the bit.ly link that you can read more about that offer. So bit.ly, ACE Elevates, you do have to capitalize ACE. And I'm happy to help. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Great.
Well, thank you very much, Priscilla. So at this point, I think that we can kind of close out our webinar today. Thank you so much to Priscilla Hansen Mahoney of Blazing Trails Coaching. And thank you so much about navigating the customer journey. If you're curious about ACE and would like to join ACE or consider joining ACE and figure out what all the benefits are, that can also be found at www.aceelevates.com.